I was 28 years old and thought I had it all. My husband, also 28, and I had been together for 8 years, 4 years of dating bliss followed by 4 years of marriage. We both worked as doctors at the same busy hospital, often pulling long hours. Exhausting as it was, I loved my job and I loved coming home to him. We shared dreams of building a family. Though we struggled to have children, we planned to adopt and complete our little world with a child. From the outside, our life looked picture perfect, and for a while, I believed it truly was. Yet, small cracks had begun to form in that perfect image, cracks that I chose to ignore. One of the first fissures appeared in the form of my sister-in-law, Chloe. Chloe is my husband's younger sister, 26 years old, beautiful, and utterly spoiled. She had blown through 4 different jobs in 6 months, each time quitting in a melodramatic huff and declaring the workplace too toxic. Despite being perfectly capable of supporting herself, Chloe preferred living off her parents' money, splurging on designer clothes and luxury accessories without a second thought. I tried not to judge. After all, everyone's journey is different, but it was hard not to notice how different Chloe was from the rest of the family. My mother-in-law, a kindly woman with a generous spirit, treated me like a daughter from day one. She hosted an elaborate family dinner on the first Saturday of each month, a tradition I came to cherish. She would spend the whole day preparing an elegant spread, appetizers, multiple mains, and decadent desserts. Around her dining table, I always felt warm and welcomed. My father-in-law, on the other hand, was a man of few words and many frowns. He rarely spoke directly to me. When he did, his comments were curt or gruff, making me feel like an unwelcome guest rather than family. Still, I respected him as my husband's father and figured he was just a taciturn personality. Chloe's presence at these dinners, however, added a layer of tension I couldn't quite name at first. She and my husband, Adam, were extremely close as siblings, which I initially found endearing. They'd tease each other, share inside jokes, and reminisce about childhood memories that made the whole family laugh. I understood sibling bonds can be strong, so I brushed off the little pangs of discomfort I felt now and then. But soon the red flags became harder to ignore. Whenever Adam showed me affection in Chloe's presence, something as small as draping an arm around my shoulder or a quick kiss on my cheek, Chloe's smile would vanish. In its place, a dark, almost resentful look would flicker across her face. One night after dinner, as we stood by the door saying our goodbyes, Adam gently kissed my forehead. I noticed Chloe watching from the hallway mirror, her eyes narrowed and her knuckles clenched around the strap of her designer purse. The look she gave me was so venomous it sent a chill down my spine. It didn't stop there. At the next family dinner, I was in the middle of telling Adam about a funny incident at work. Right as I started getting to the punchline, Chloe suddenly interrupted and interjected with her own story, loudly talking over me. Adam, ever the doting brother, turned his attention completely to her, leaving me awkwardly silent and sidelined. It wasn't an isolated incident. Chloe would frequently butt into our private conversations. She even had the audacity to step in between us physically. If I was standing beside Adam, she'd wedge herself into the space, forcing me aside so she could claim his attention. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things or overreacting. Who wants to believe that their husband's sister is jealous of their relationship? Still, the unease grew inside me like a dark cloud. I eventually gathered the courage to speak to Adam about it, hoping he'd reassure me. One quiet night at home, I broached the topic gently. Have you noticed how Chloe acts around us? Sometimes I feel like she resents me being close to you. Adam looked up from his medical journal with a frown that bordered on annoyance. She's my sister, he replied flatly. You're reading into things. Chloe has been nothing but nice to you. Don't be so insecure, babe. He patted my hand absent-mindedly and went back to his reading, effectively ending the discussion. I bit my tongue, feeling a mix of embarrassment and frustration. Maybe he was right, maybe I was overthinking it. The last thing I wanted was to come off as the jealous, paranoid wife. So I dropped it and tried to bury those feelings of doubt, convincing myself that in time, Chloe would warm up to me or at least accept me fully as her brother's wife. Little did I know, a far more devastating betrayal was brewing, one that would make Chloe's petty slights at dinner feel like child's play. A few months later, fate intervened in a way I never could have foreseen. It started off as an ordinary Friday, though I remember feeling a bit under the weather that morning. I brushed it off, likely just fatigue from a string of back-to-back shifts in the ER. Adam had the day off for once, and over breakfast he mentioned plans to meet up with a couple of his old college buddies. "I haven't seen them in ages," he said with an eager grin. "We're doing a little reunion lunch." I was happy for him. "Have fun," I replied, kissing him goodbye. "I should be home by 7. Maybe we can watch a movie tonight?" He nodded, distracted by his phone buzzing with messages, presumably from his friends coordinating their meetup. I left for work with a gentle warmth in my heart, thinking how nice it was that he'd get a break to enjoy himself. At the hospital, the day quickly went downhill. By midday, I was feeling lightheaded and nauseous. My vision blurred at the edges as I stood in the nurse's station trying to fill out a patient chart. The next thing I knew, the floor was rushing up to meet me. I had fainted, crumpling unceremoniously in front of my colleagues. When I came to, I was lying on a gurney with concerned faces hovering above me. My friend and coworker, Dr. Selina Patel, pressed a cold cup of water into my hand. "You nearly gave us all a heart attack," she scolded gently. "That's it. You're going home, and I'm driving you." No arguments. I was reluctant. I hated abandoning my shift and leaving my colleagues short-staffed. But Selina was having none of it. "You won't be any help to your patients if you're the one needing a hospital bed," she insisted. I realized she was right. My body was demanding rest. So I sent a quick text to Adam, "Feeling really sick, coming home early. Selina driving me." He didn't immediately reply, but I wasn't worried. He was probably busy catching up with friends, and I'd likely beat him home anyway. As promised, Selina drove me home. During the car ride, I stared out the window, trying to calm the gnawing worry in my stomach. It was probably just exhaustion or a mild bug. Nothing serious, I told myself. Selina, ever the mother hen, lectured me on taking better care of my health. I half listened, already imagining the comfort of my bed. By the time we pulled up to my house, it was early afternoon, around 2 p.m. The neighborhood was quiet in that lull before kids returned from school and parents from work. I thanked Selina and reassured her I'd call if I needed anything. She watched me walk up the path until I unlocked the front door and waved that I was okay. As she drove off, I remember thinking how grateful I was to have a friend like her. Little did I know that I would soon need her support for something far more dire than a fainting spell. Stepping inside, I immediately noticed something was off. For one, the house wasn't empty like I expected. Our living room, visible from the entryway, had signs of occupancy, 2 coffee mugs on the table and the throw blanket rumpled on the couch. My heart did a little flip. Adam must have come home early from his reunion. But why hadn't he called or texted to check on me when he got my message? Maybe he hadn't seen it. I closed the door softly and set down my bag. That's when I saw them, Adam's favorite pair of shoes, kicked off haphazardly near the entry, and next to them, a pair of women's shoes, shiny, rose gold designer flats. Those shoes sent a jolt of recognition through me. I had seen them before, on Chloe's feet. My stomach lurched, unease morphing into dread. What was Chloe's footwear doing in my house when neither she nor Adam had mentioned she'd be visiting? My mind raced through innocent explanations. Perhaps her car broke down nearby and she came here for help, or she had an item to drop off for me, or maybe the siblings decided to have a spur-of-the-moment hangout. I gingerly picked up the rose gold jacket that hung on the coat rack. It definitely belonged to Chloe. I recognized it from an expensive boutique she dragged me into months ago. The jacket had been a gift from her father, a reward for landing, and subsequently quitting, one of those short-lived jobs. I remembered how she'd flaunted it at the last family dinner. The house was eerily quiet, but as I strained my ears, I caught a faint noise from upstairs, a rhythmic thumping and a muffled sound that could have been a moan. My heart was pounding now, each beat loud in my ears. A horrible suspicion took hold. No, impossible. I chastised myself even for thinking it. But every fiber of my being was on high alert as I carefully climbed the stairs, one hand gripping the railing to steady my trembling limbs. Our bedroom door was half open. The sounds were clearer now, a mix of rustling fabric and intimate whispers. My throat went dry and tears pricked at my eyes as I approached the opening. Through the small gap, an unbelievable sight met my eyes and confirmed my worst nightmare. There, on the bed where I slept beside my husband every night, was Chloe, sprawled out on the sheets, her designer skirt hiked up scandalously high. And Adam, my husband, my partner, my love, was looming over her, his hands caressing her face in a way that was sickeningly tender and familiar. They were kissing deeply, oblivious to the world, completely entwined in an act that turned my stomach. I felt my soul shatter in that moment. A mix of shock, rage, and heartbreak rooted me to the spot. My mind struggled to process what my eyes plainly saw. Adam and Chloe, his own sister. How long? How could they? 1,000 questions flashed through my mind in the span of those paralyzing seconds. My hands were trembling so violently I almost dropped my phone. Somehow, on autopilot, I managed to do the one thing that cold, hard logic urged. I hit the record button. Through the narrow opening, I captured a video of them writhing on top of our marital bed, their betrayal immortalized in digital form. A still shot wouldn't hurt either. I silently took a photo as well. Each shutter click of the camera app felt deafening to me, but they were too engrossed in their depravity to notice. I'm not sure how long I stood there, maybe it was only a minute, though it felt like an eternity of watching my entire world collapse. At some point, clarity pierced through my shock. I didn't want to see any more. I couldn't bear another second of this twisted tableau. With a deep, steadying breath, one that did nothing to steady me, I pushed the door open wide. What the hell is going on here? I announced myself, voice cracking with fury and pain. It came out louder than I expected, half scream, half sob. The effect was instantaneous. Adam practically leapt off the bed. Chloe scrambled up, hastily pulling down her skirt and fixing her askew blouse, her face flushed. Whether from the act or being caught, I couldn't care less. My husband, no, this man was no longer deserving of that title, stood there, shirt unbuttoned, face drained of all color. He looked like a ghost caught in headlights, eyes wide with terror and guilt. As for Chloe, once she had composed herself, a slow, wicked smirk crept across her lips. Instead of shame or fear, satisfaction gleamed in her eyes. She actually looked proud to have been caught. That expression lit a powder keg inside me. I was shaking with rage. How long? How long has this been going on? I shouted, waving my phone in the air. Neither of them answered immediately. Adam opened his mouth but nothing came out. His lips moved soundlessly, like a fish out of water. Chloe just folded her arms, that smug smile never leaving her face. Finally, Adam stammered, It's not what it looks like," a pathetic, cliché line that only stoked my anger. Not what it looks like? I echoed, my voice eerily calm even as tears blurred my vision. It looks like you were just fucking your sister in our bed. So please, enlighten me, how is it not that? I spat the words with such venom that even Chloe's smile faltered for a second. Adam reached out a hand pleadingly. We. It just happened, don't. You. Dare. I hissed, stepping back from his reach. I could feel my whole body quivering, adrenaline and devastation coursing through me. Don't you dare try to explain or justify this. There is no coming back from what I just saw. Chloe rolled her eyes dramatically, as if I were the one being unreasonable. Oh, calm down, she drawled, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. This is a family matter. You married into our family, remember? Some things, some bonds, are thicker than marriage. Her audacity took my breath away. She slipped on an air of innocence as she continued, I was just comforting my brother. You've been so busy with work, he's been lonely. Chloe put a deliberate emphasis on that last word, her implication clear. I almost lunged at her, my fists clenched at my sides as a red haze clouded my vision. Comforting? Lonely? I echoed incredulously. He has a wife. And you're his sister, for God's sake. My voice cracked on the word, sister, the sheer taboo of what they'd done rendering me almost nauseous. Chloe just shrugged, picking up her designer jacket from the chair where it had been tossed. With a hair flip and that insufferable smirk still etched on her face, she brushed past me. At the door, she paused, looking back over her shoulder. He never would have strayed if you were taking proper care of him, she sneered softly. Think about that. And then she left the room, heels clicking casually down the hallway as if she hadn't a care in the world. Her words were a slap. I stood there, tears streaming down my face, the pain of betrayal now mixed with an acute sense of humiliation and self-doubt. For a split second, I actually questioned myself, had I failed Adam? Was it my fault somehow? But then I looked at him, disheveled and guilty in the wreckage of our bed, and I remembered Chloe's triumphant grin. No. I would not let them twist this on me. Adam started to babble, stepping forward. Please, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. His eyes were wet, whether from tears or panic, I couldn't tell. He reached out as if to touch me, but I recoiled. My glare must have conveyed the disgust I felt, because he stopped in his tracks. Get out, I said in a low, deadly tone. He blinked, as if he hadn't heard right. I pointed towards the door. I said, get out. Both of you. Now. He opened his mouth to protest, but I had no patience left. I held up my phone, my ace of spades. I have you on video. Do you really want to test me right now? Get out. I roared the last two words. Adam's shoulders slumped in defeat. He grabbed his shoes from the corner and fled, chasing after Chloe like a coward. Moments later, I heard the front door slam. The silence they left behind was deafening. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the scene of the crime, and finally let out a wail of anguish that no one but the walls could hear. In a matter of minutes, my marriage, my trust, and my entire sense of reality had been obliterated. I don't know how long I sat on that bed, shattered and sobbing into my trembling hands. Eventually, survival instincts kicked in. I forced myself up, packed a quick overnight bag, and drove to the only place I felt even slightly safe, Selena's apartment. She welcomed me with open arms. She was shocked when I told her the broad strokes of what happened, and she didn't ask questions when I collapsed on her couch in exhaustion. The next few days were a blur of heartbreak and rage-fueled clarity. I consulted a divorce attorney first thing Monday morning, still seething and raw. I wanted out of this marriage as soon as humanly possible. There was no confronting Adam further, it was pointless, and I refused to hear any more of his excuses. Instead, I prepared for the inevitable storm that was about to come from his family. It didn't take long. By midweek, my phone was flooded with messages from Adam's parents and even a few extended family members. Apparently, Chloe had wasted no time spinning her version of the story. And it was a doozy of a lie. My mother-in-law's text was sorrowful and pleading. Honey, please, there must be a misunderstanding. Chloe told us you got upset over something innocent. She says you accused them of something impossible. We love you, we know you've been stressed, let's talk. Innocent? Impossible? My blood boiled reading those words. It was clear Chloe hadn't told them the truth. My father-in-law's message was far less kind, and far more insulting. I never took you for an insecure, vindictive woman, but you proved me wrong. Yelling at my daughter and throwing her out of your house over a little sibling relationship? Shame on you. You're not the woman I thought you were. Jealousy is an ugly look on you. He went on to call me a horrible bitch, spelled beach, in his angry haste, and accused me of trying to sabotage a normal sibling bond out of envy. I could practically see his furious, red face through the screen. Reading his tirade left me both livid and incredulous. How could they not see something was off? How could a father think what I witnessed was just normal sibling affection, unless he was fed a complete lie? Chloe's narrative, I gathered from piecing together their messages, was that she had simply dropped by our house to deliver a gift she'd bought for me. According to her, I came home, apparently, in a mood, saw her in the house with Adam, and inexplicably exploded in jealousy just because Adam gave her a platonic hug of greeting. She claimed I screamed at her, called her vile names, and threw both her and my husband out in a hysterical fit. In her tale, I was the villain, the crazy, barren wife so paranoid and insecure that I couldn't stand my husband showing affection to his own sister. It was so twisted, so perverse, that I almost admired her nerve. She had essentially gaslit her entire family into seeing me as an unstable, horrible person. And given my father-in-law's furious response, many of them believed her. Perhaps it was easier to accept that the outsider, me, was nuts than to contemplate the horrifying truth that their golden children, brother and sister, were committing the ultimate taboo. But I wasn't about to let them destroy my reputation or my sanity with lies. I had the truth on my side, right there on my phone. Still, I took a deep breath and weighed my next steps carefully. A part of me morbidly wanted to see how far they'd go. Maybe I needed to gather every last hurtful word they hurled at me, to steel my resolve for the scorched earth response I was about to unleash. My mother-in-law left a voicemail in tears, saying she loved me like a daughter and urging me to come over so we could sort out the misunderstanding. It hurt to hear her so distressed. She had always been good to me, and I realized Chloe must have only told her a very watered-down version of the story, enough to make me look irrational but not enough to truly break her heart. After all, Chloe was the apple of her father's eye. As far as her parents knew, their daughter could do no serious wrong. I decided to reply to my father-in-law first, since he was the most hostile. With trembling fingers, I typed out a single line. "What exactly did Chloe tell you happened?" He fired back almost instantly, doubling down with even more self-righteous fury about how I'd viciously attacked his daughter over nothing. He ended with a snide remark. "I always knew you were too insecure to handle this family." That was it for me. No more playing nice. If they wanted proof, I'd give it to them unfiltered. Without a single word of commentary, I sent my father-in-law the video, the 30 seconds of irrefutable proof, grainy but clear enough, that showed his son and daughter committing the unspeakable on my bed. I sent the same video to my mother-in-law, along with a brief message. "I'm sorry you had to see this, but I won't be lied about. This is what I came home to. This is the truth." The responses were swift and dramatic. Within minutes, my phone erupted with incoming calls, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and even Adam. I didn't pick up any of them. I let them stew in what they'd seen. My mother-in-law left a voicemail sobbing, apologizing over and begging me to speak to her. My father-in-law, usually so bombastic, suddenly went silent. I didn't hear a peep from him beyond a single text. "I have no words. I'm sorry." As for Adam, he sent a flurry of texts, apologies, excuses, desperate pleas to talk. I ignored all of it. By the end of that week, my marriage was truly over. Divorce papers were filed, and Adam didn't contest a single line. Through a mutual friend, I learned that he moved out of our house and was crashing with a cousin to avoid facing his parents or me. Chloe, predictably, vanished from town. Word was that she flew off to Europe to clear her head, using her parents' dime, of course. I wish I could say I felt triumphant after showing them all the truth, but the reality was far more bitter. Yes, I was vindicated, my good name restored among his family and our friends once the truth spread. But that victory came at the cost of an entire family's rupture. My sweet mother-in-law was utterly heartbroken and even ended up in the hospital briefly for stress-related health issues. The extended family was in turmoil, torn between disgust and disbelief. And me? I was left to grapple with a trauma that felt like it belonged in a twisted soap opera rather than my real life. Through it all, my friend Selena never left my side. With her support and a good therapist, I navigated the painful weeks that followed. I moved out of that house of horrors and into a small, cozy apartment downtown. I focused on my work and on healing myself piece by piece. I swore off dating. I needed time to mend my shattered heart. Eventually, the divorce was finalized quietly. Adam couldn't even muster the courage to face me in court, so everything was handled through lawyers. We divided assets, and just like that, 8 years together were reduced to paperwork and signatures. I truly thought that was the end of the story, a sad, strange chapter of my life that I would try to forget as I moved on. But, as it turns out, fate had one more twist in store for me. And this time, it was my turn to serve up some revenge. 1 year later, I found myself in a place I never expected to be, genuinely happy again. Time can be merciful that way. I had a new apartment filled with houseplants and sunlight, a group of supportive friends, and even a promotion at the hospital. I had rediscovered peace and a sense of self that I thought I'd lost. Life was calm, and I was content. I carried the scars of what happened, yes, but they were healing. About 6 months after the divorce, I received an email from my former mother-in-law. We hadn't spoken directly since everything imploded. In her message, she said she missed me and wanted to see me. She also mentioned that my father-in-law, Richard, wished to apologize to me in person for the horrible things he had said. She proposed meeting at a coffee shop, if I was comfortable with it. I mulled it over. I owed them nothing, really. And yet, I felt a pang of sympathy for the two of them. They were, in their own way, collateral damage of their children's sins. Especially my mother-in-law, who had been nothing but kind to me. I agreed to meet. We met on a chilly Sunday afternoon at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. When they walked in, I almost didn't recognize them at first. They both looked worn down by sorrow. My mother-in-law rushed to hug me, tears in her eyes. She kept apologizing over and over, for not believing me right away, for what her children did, for everything. I found myself comforting her, telling her I didn't blame her. Honestly, I didn't. She had been deceived like I was. Richard sat silently across from me until his wife nudged him sharply. He cleared his throat, eyes downcast, and said, "I'm sorry. I was wrong about you. I should never have believed," he trailed off, unable to say it. I appreciated the effort it took for him to apologize. Richard was a proud man, and admitting fault didn't come naturally to him. I accepted his apology with a nod. We talked for a short while. It was awkward, it was emotional, but ultimately healing in a small way. When we parted, I truly thought it was probably the last time I'd ever see either of them socially. Then, about a week later, Richard emailed me. He said that during the tumult of everything, some personal belongings of mine were left at the house, a few books, a jewelry box my grandmother had gifted me, and some other odds and ends. He offered to drop them off or have me come by to pick them up, whichever I preferred. Since I was curious, and, I'll admit, I didn't mind the idea of seeing how the old house felt without Adam's presence haunting it, I told him I'd come by that weekend. So that Saturday, I drove to my former in-law's house, the place that used to be the backdrop of so many happy memories and later the scene of my worst nightmare. My mother-in-law was out of town visiting her sister, so it was just Richard at home. He greeted me at the door with a polite, sad smile. Walking inside was surreal. The house felt the same and yet entirely different without Adam and Chloe around. I gathered my few forgotten belongings into a small box. As I was saying goodbye, Richard cleared his throat. "Would you care for a cup of tea before you go?" he asked. "I'd appreciate the company." His eyes were earnest, almost pleading. Loneliness hung on him like a heavy coat. I found myself agreeing. "Tea sounds nice," I replied softly. We settled in the living room, the very room where, on those first Saturday dinners, I used to sit beside Adam. We made the kind of small talk that strangers or acquaintances make. But gradually, conversation drifted to more personal territory. He spoke about my mother-in-law's health scares and how he was struggling to hold everything together. I told him about a recent case at the hospital. 2 cups of tea turned into 3. Before I knew it, a couple of hours had passed. When I finally rose to leave, Richard walked me to the door. He hesitated, then said, "It was really good to talk. I haven't been able to talk to anyone about what happened. Not even Teresa." Teresa was my mother-in-law's name. There was such profound sadness and sincerity in his voice. On impulse, I reached out and squeezed his hand. "Take care of yourself, Richard," I said gently. "You know, if you ever need to talk again, I'm here." I meant it kindly. In truth, I felt sorry for him. He took me up on that offer. What started as one coffee meeting turned into an occasional phone call. An occasional phone call turned into a regular check-in. Over the next couple of months, Richard and I developed an unlikely friendship. We were two people bound by a shared trauma. With me, he could speak openly about his anger and pain over what his children had done. And with him, I found an empathetic ear for my own lingering hurts, something I hadn't expected. I won't pretend it wasn't strange. The first few times we talked or met up for a coffee, I questioned what on earth I was doing. This was the father of my ex-husband, a man who once barely acknowledged me unless it was to scold or criticize. But people change when the world flips upside down. He had softened, become more introspective. And I had grown a backbone of steel coated in wit as a result of surviving the scandal. In a weird way, we balanced each other out. Then came the night that changed everything. We had started meeting occasionally for dinner, strictly as friends. One evening, after a pleasant meal at a little out-of-the-way restaurant, we were walking to our cars. It was dark, the parking lot empty and quiet. I remember we were laughing about something. I think I had just recounted a silly story from work about a patient who insisted on giving me a recipe mid-consultation. For a moment, I forgot that this was my ex's father I was joking with. We were just two people enjoying each other's company. Then I stumbled. To this day, I'm not sure if I tripped over a loose bit of pavement or my own feet, but I pitched forward. Richard's arms shot out to catch me before I hit the ground. It was such a quick, instinctual movement. One moment I was falling, the next I was pressed against him, his hands steadying me by my waist. I looked up to thank him, and whatever words I had died on my tongue. He was looking down at me with an expression I hadn't seen before, protective, concerned, yes, but there was something more. His hands lingered at my waist, and I became acutely aware of how close we were standing. The air suddenly felt thick and charged. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. His voice had a new warmth to it. "Why yeah," I managed, my heart fluttering in a way I couldn't blame on the near fall alone. "We should have stepped apart, said goodnight, and gone our separate ways." But neither of us moved. There was a magnetism in that moment, born of loneliness and understanding, and something that had been quietly growing between us. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we moved at the same time. But before I knew it, my arms were around his neck and his lips were on mine. The kiss was gentle for about half a second, and then all the months of restraint and unspoken tension ignited. He kissed me deeply, hungrily, and I responded with equal fervor. It was like pouring gasoline on a glowing ember that had been there all along, unnoticed until it burst into flames. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathing hard. This is wrong," Richard murmured, yet he didn't let go of me. "Maybe," I whispered, searching his eyes, "but it feels right." His resolve crumbled. He pulled me back to him and kissed me again, and we stood there in the dark parking lot, tangled up in each other, letting years of hurt and need melt away. That night, we didn't go beyond kissing. We said goodnight with a mix of exhilaration and confusion. I drove home trembling, part of me wondering what the hell I was doing, but another part of me alive with a thrill I hadn't felt in ages. Thus began our affair. There's no pretty or simple way to justify it. Some would call it healing through connection, others would call it a revenge-fueled fling. Maybe it was a bit of both. All I know is that being with Richard felt good. It was comforting and passionate all at once. With him, I felt desired, seen, and understood. And let's be brutally honest, the fact that he was my ex-husband's father made it illicitly satisfying. The part of me that still burned with anger toward Adam and Chloe reveled in the sheer audacity of it all. We kept things discreet. After that night, our relationship crossed fully into the romantic and physical realm. We met up at a hotel out of town a few times, or at my apartment when we were sure no one would interrupt. The spark between us was undeniable. What surprised me was how natural it felt. In another life, in a different story, perhaps we might have even fallen in love for real. But we both knew this wasn't that kind of story. This was about solace in the arms of someone who understood, and yes, about a deep subconscious desire to turn the tables on those who had hurt us. I didn't tell a soul about us. Neither did he. It was our secret, and that secrecy was part of the thrill. Then came the day an opportunity presented itself to deliver the ultimate coup de grace to my ex and his sister, an opportunity too perfect to pass up. It was the first Saturday of the month, over a year since the disaster that ended my marriage. Under normal circumstances, that would have been family dinner night. But the family was far from whole now. My mother-in-law was staying with her sister out of state for a while, seeking some peace. Chloe was still abroad, showing no signs of returning. And Adam, well, ironically, Adam had moved back into his parents' house temporarily after our divorce, mainly to keep his mom company while his dad traveled for work, or so I'd heard. On this particular first Saturday, Adam was at the house with his father, presumably keeping him company in my mother-in-law's absence. Richard texted me that morning, "He's here. What do you want me to do?" I stared at that message, and a slow smile curved my lips. It was like the universe had aligned for one grand finale. "Do nothing," I replied. "I'll be over at 2. I have a plan." That afternoon, I drove to the house. I didn't bother to knock. I still had a key, they had never asked for it back, interestingly. I walked in through the front door like I still owned the place. In the living room, Adam was lounging on the couch watching a football game, looking bored. He bolted upright when he saw me stride in. "What are you doing here?" he asked, bewildered and tense. I gave him a cold, mirthless smile. "I'm here to see your father." "Where is he?" I said coolly. Adam blinked in confusion. Perhaps he thought I was here to rehash the past or to seek some kind of closure. He gestured toward the kitchen. I didn't wait for him to finish. I walked straight to the kitchen, my heels clicking assertively on the hardwood. Richard was there, as I knew he would be, leaning against the counter pretending to read a newspaper. He looked up, feigning surprise. "Oh, hi," he said, as if my presence was unexpected. I smiled. Without a word, I crossed the kitchen, put my hands on his shoulders, and pulled him into a deep, passionate kiss. He responded immediately, wrapping his arms around me. We kissed like we were the only two people in the world. Except, we weren't. Adam stood frozen in the doorway, gaping at the scene before him. When Richard and I finally broke the kiss, I turned to face my ex-husband. The look on his face was one I'll cherish forever, pure horror, confusion, and disgust all rolled into one. His eyes were wide as saucers, jaw slack. It was as if his brain couldn't compute what it was seeing. "Dad. What the," he stammered. I gently ran a finger down Richard's chest, feeling him shiver slightly at my touch, and responded calmly, "Oh, I'm sorry. Does this bother you, Adam? Are you upset to catch your father and your ex-wife together?" I made sure to emphasize those words, throwing the same phrasing he had used back at him. Adam turned various shades of pale and green. How could you?" he began, voice trembling with rage or maybe shock. I cut him off, my tone dripping with faux innocence. "What's wrong? This is just a little family affection, right? Normal, harmless. Surely you, of all people, wouldn't misinterpret a little visit between a daughter-in-law and her dear father-in-law." I was outright taunting him now, a confident smirk on my face. Richard played his part perfectly. He stood beside me and added, "Son, I think you should leave. She is here as my guest." His voice was stern, but I detected an undercurrent of satisfaction. You're sleeping with her?" Adam finally roared, finding his voice. He looked at his father with betrayal, then at me with utter contempt. If he had any moral high ground to stand on, any right to feel wronged, it was laughable given what he had done. The irony was so rich I could have drowned in it. I just laughed, a light, free sound that seemed to infuriate him more. That's none of your business, brother, I sneered, throwing Chloe's own word back in his face. The color drained from Adam's face as the full circle of it all hit him. He opened his mouth, then closed it, struggling to find a rebuttal. You're sick, he finally spat at both of us, face contorting with disgust. This is so messed up. I felt Richard tense slightly, perhaps an instinct to defend me or himself. But I placed a calming hand on his arm and stepped forward, closer to the pathetic shell of a man I once called my husband. You're going to lecture me on what's messed up? I said in a low, dangerous voice. At least we're not related by blood. I didn't break any vows, and I sure as hell didn't hide it and lie about it. I was inches from Adam now, and he actually stepped back. I could see the memory of my video evidence flicker in his eyes. He knew he had no moral leg to stand on here. This is revenge then? You're doing this to get back at me? He asked, as if he couldn't believe I was capable of such a thing. I smiled, and let the silence answer for me. In truth, what had started as an unlikely connection had indeed become the ultimate revenge. And seeing his face, hearing the anger and hurt in his voice, yes, I savored it. Does that make me twisted? Perhaps. But after what he and his sister did, I didn't care. Adam looked between his father and me, perhaps realizing that nothing he said could undo what he was witnessing. The mighty blow had been dealt. With a string of curses, he shoved past us, grabbing his keys from the counter and storming out the back door. A moment later, I heard his car peel out of the driveway at breakneck speed. As the dust settled, Richard let out a breath he'd been holding. That was, he began, but I stopped him with another kiss. My heart was pounding from the adrenaline of what we'd just done. It was risky and dramatic, and absolutely worth it. We spent the rest of that afternoon together, wrapped up in each other in the very house where I'd once been the dutiful wife. It felt both strange and exhilarating. In the afterglow of both passion and triumph, I found myself smiling genuinely. I can't speak to what happened between Adam and his father after that. I'm sure there were explosive arguments and further fallouts. But frankly, I didn't care. I had delivered my message loud and clear. I got the last laugh. In the following weeks, I heard through my mother-in-law, who decided to remain oblivious to the specifics of what happened, probably for her own sanity, that Adam moved out abruptly and went to live in another city. Chloe, rumor had it, decided to extend her stay abroad indefinitely. I doubt she had many reasons to come home anyway, with her scandal not forgotten. As for Richard and me, we eventually parted ways romantically. Ours was not a love story for the ages, but rather a season of healing and retribution. Once we had both gotten what we needed, closure, comfort, and yes, revenge, we amicably ended our affair. He returned to trying to fix his marriage. I wished him well, truly. My mother-in-law didn't deserve any more pain, and I moved on, heart lighter than it had been in a long time. Do I regret any of it? No. If you're asking whether getting my final twist of vengeance, hooking up with my ex-husband's dad, was worth it, let me put it this way, the answer to that question is a resounding yes. It was scandalous, it was unexpected, and it was deliciously satisfying. In the end, I reclaimed my power in the most spicy way imaginable. Betrayed by blood, perhaps, but avenged by desire. I turned the worst thing that ever happened to me into a story of empowerment and revenge that I'll carry with a smirk for the rest of my life.